Welcome to the Milsurf My channel. Today I'm going to talk about a rifle that is more rare and there's definitely less information out there on than the Hakim rifle, the Rasheed. As with the Hakim video, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Miles Vining, as his studies of Middle Eastern weaponry can go a long way to bust Fuddlore narrative. I don't mean to name drop Mr. Vining throughout this video, but there's not much written on the Rasheed, and without his research I too would fall victim to repeating Fuddlore. Please check out the links to the Silah Report and his channels below. To gain a good background of Egyptian history, please watch my Hakim history video, link in the card above. I went over how the British weaseled their way into having a big say into how Egypt was run, and how the Suez Crisis was finally the event that threw off the British yoke. A big reason that Egypt would adopt the Hakim was, 1. They had millions of rounds of 8mm Mauser ammo left there after World War II. 2. They wanted to have a domestically produced semi-auto rifle. 3. NASA initially wanted to avoid being beholden to the West or the Soviets. And 4. Egypt already had a relationship with Sweden dating back to King Farouk with the Port Said submachine gun. Making a deal with Sweden, who was in the process of replacing their AG-42B Yingman rifle with an eventual G3 copy, the AK-4, was in both parties' best interest, as Egypt got a rifle, and Sweden got to sell know-how and equipment for a rifle they deemed obsolete. During this time, Egypt was basically keep getting embarrassed militarily by Israel. The Levin affair would see Israel fake Egyptian attacks against the British so Israel could, quote, retaliate against Egypt by attacking Gaza. Events like this would push Egypt into a huge arms deal with Czechoslovakia on September 27, 1955, where they received Czech and Soviet small arms, as well as Soviet tank and aircrafts. This would introduce rifles such as the VZ-52 and the SKS to Egypt. Most of what Egypt used during the Suez Crisis in 1956 were Czech arms that came from this deal. While the Suez Crisis helped to throw off the yoke of the British, thanks to both the US and Soviet Union rebuking Great Britain and France, the fact of the matter was the United States backed Egypt's biggest rival in Israel, so Egypt would be pushed further into the Soviet sphere of influence. By the Six-Day War in 1967, Egyptian forces would be fielding mostly Soviet-produced arms, while Hakim rifles would be used as aid to Yemen and Somalia. Not too long after, the Mahdi factory would be equipped to produce Egypt's own AKM, and Egypt would produce their own AK-47s on this machinery, even after Sadat would push the Soviets away when he came to power. So where does this put the Rasheed? There are only 7,000 to 8,000 produced in Egypt, and another 2,000 produced in Iraq, making this a rare rifle, especially in the United States. There's so much Fuddlore on this rifle that I got sucked back into it even after interviewing Mr. Vining last spring. I had to contact him again to get everything straightened out, because I had a hard time coming up with a reason why Egyptian made the Rasheed and got my timelines messed up, thanks to mainly, quote, common knowledge out there on the interwebs. So let's give this a shot. First, we need to address the Fuddlore. Most videos you watch in the Rasheed will have little to no history, and when they do, they said that the rifles were a scaled-down Hakim built between 1960 and 61. Much of this has to do with serial numbers being in Arabic, and the rifle saying made in UAR on the side. UAR is the short-lived United Arab Republic, which was a combination of Egypt and Syria beginning in 1958 and dissolved in 1961. One thing to keep in mind is that if Egypt officially went by United Arab Republic even after this dissolution until 1971, after which it changed to the Arab Republic of Egypt, or ARE. The rifle's Arabic numeral serial numbers don't make it obvious to the American eye what year these were produced. After looking at mine and translating the number using the sights, my rifle was made in 1968. I should have gotten that these rifles were made after the Six-Day War after my conversation with Miles last spring, but the time it took me to get this video out, and the fact that there were holes in my notes led me to try to fill them. 1960 to 61 would actually make more sense when it comes to the why of the Rasheed coming into existence. Since this channel deals with history over fine technical details, finding out the why of a firearm is very important to me. I explained the why for the Hakim, And to me, the Czech arms deal and leaning more on Soviet Union bringing 7.62 by 39 ammo into the country made it make sense that they would look to scale down the Hakim to produce a weapon on the same machinery to fire the round. This, the common misunderstanding about made in UAR, and the fact that there's so little written about these rifles makes it hard for me to fault the Fuddlore. But thanks to Mr. Vining and the Silah Report's research, we can get the correct information out there. Still, even with the evidence of the damn year on my rifle telling me miles was correct, this had me scratching my head as to why Rasheed rifles exist, since Egypt used Soviet AK-47s during the Six-Day War, looked to spool up the Mahdi factory to produce AKMs shortly thereafter, and there are so few Rasheeds even built. Miles said that their research leads them to believe that Nasser basically wanted a home-produced version of the SKS, and this is what the industry presented him. The Rasheed was a Nasser pet project. While the rifle retains an improved Jungmann direct impingement system, no more Jungmann or Hakim thumb, it also has many qualities of the SKS. The rifle is similar in size and weight and has a Soviet SKS-style folding knife bayonet. While it has 10-round detachable magazine, it is meant to be used as a fixed magazine in practice and fed via stripper clips. The feed is too narrow to use most SKS stripper clips, and I really have no idea where to get the clips used with the Rasheed. Alright, in the main part of the video, I said that the Rasheed is basically a Nasser pet project. He wanted an Egyptian-produced SKS, and this is basically what was presented to him. The Rasheed had the basic Jungmann system, but it kind of looks and feels like an SKS. And when I talk about my shooting later on, it does actually feel very similar to the Albanian SKS, as I took that out on the same day. But up here I have a Russian SKS, and you can see the similarities with the folding blade bayonet. Then I also have my Albanian right here, basically because, now I don't know how many Albanians made it to Egypt as aid, but it looks like the Albanian has a little bit longer stock than the Russian or the Chinese, and it has a very similar feel to the Rasheed, so that was kind of my apples to apples comparison. Also, the stripper clip, the Rasheed has a proprietary stripper clip, although it does kind of work there, but for the most part it doesn't work very well, whereas it works perfectly in the SKS. So now that I compared it to the SKS, let's compare it real quick to the Hakim rifle, its bigger brother. Alright, let's compare the Rasheed to the Hakim now. Still has the same basic Jungmann system, but you see the Rasheed has the folding bayonet, which I showed with the SKSs, whereas the Rasheed has a detachable bayonet. I do not have a bayonet for the Hakim. You can see the big muzzle brake on the Hakim, which that was one of the improvements Eklund put on it for the Hakim over the Jungmann rifle, whereas the Rasheed has just a capped threaded barrel. It still has the gas gas key there, so you can change how much gas is used on the Rasheed like you can the Hakim, which of course that wasn't on the Jungmann rifle. But there have been a couple improvements to the system where you're not likely to get your fingers chopped off like with the Hakim. I did the hot dog demonstration on the Hakim video, and then of course I did another video on field stripping the Hakim, but just to review, that can really hurt, especially if you're trying to feed it via stripper clip, and that happens. You can get a good chunk of your thumb in the action there. So the improvement on the Rasheed, you have a non-reciprocating handle here. Let me pull the magazine out here so we can show this action. Basically, you just got to pull it back, let it go, and you don't even have to stick your fingers in there. So this is a big improvement over the Jungmann and Hakim. So let's do a quick takedown. You see me take the magazine out already. It is pretty similar to the Hakim. You want your bolt released there. Pull your dust cover up. Put your safety in the middle. Pull your safety out. Then you can pull your dust cover out. Your spring comes off a lot easier on the Rasheed than it does the Hakim. You got double spring in there, and you got a little guide rod in there. And then all you got to do is pull your bolt and bolt carrier out. It just takes a little twist here to kind of get the bolt out, and you are completely field stripped. To get her back together, just basically reverse the process. You gotta get the bolt in the bolt carrier, give her a little twist, make sure she's in there real good, and then you want your bolt kind of in the forward position in your bolt carrier. Just like on the Hakim, you want to place it on the inside of the rail. It's a little pickier with the Rasheed, though. It isn't quite as quick going. And you got to hold your hammer down, get it to go all the way forward. So next we need to put the dust cover back on. You can put your spring over that guide rod in there. And just like on the Hakim, you put it on the outside of the rail. And as I said earlier with the bolt, it's kind of picky there also. So you got to kind of get her on there really straight. Put your spring in there. And then just make sure that I got her on there correctly. Then you got to put your safety back on. Have your safety in the middle. Make sure she's seated real well. You can go either way with it. Function check. Put your magazine in. And you are ready to go. So there's a basic comparison between the Rasheed, the SKS, and the Hakim in a quick takedown. So let's get back to the video. The name of the Rasheed rifle comes from an air marshal in Egypt, although I'm unable to find much information on him like I was able to with Abdul Hakim Emir. There would only be 6,000 to 8,000 of these rifles made in Egypt. There's another even more rare variant out there called the Baghdad. It was made in, you guessed it, Baghdad, Iraq. These are marked with a triangle and have a definite worse machine marks than the Egyptian Rasheeds. There are only around 2,000 of these made, and it's likely in the single digits of known examples in the U.S. So if you happen to have a Rasheed, look near your serial number and on your safety to see if you have this triangle marking. Shooting the Rasheed was pretty similar to the Albanian SKS I took out that day. It actually seems to have less recoil impulse, but that's really splitting hairs. You still feel the wash of gas in your face, but not to the extent of the Hakim. I really wish I had proper stripper clips so I could try a quick reload. Still, the handle to release your bolt, the Rasheed in general feels a lot like the SKS. Please be aware of where your elected officials and the groups that claim to represent you stand on the Second Amendment. Please join the GOA, the biggest no-compromise 2A organization out there, and get $5 off your membership with the link in the description. If you like my content, please check out my other videos, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Also, please check out my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and who I support on Utreon and Patreon. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day. Alright, I'm going to try to pretend like I'm that godless lefty, Ian McCollum.